Hello, this is Katina Morrison, and welcome to the Inflamed Sisters Thriving podcast. This is a safe space created to guide women living with chronic illness to uncover their purpose by doing what they were meant to do despite chronic illness, move in power by advocating for themselves, and accelerate their growth in health, career, and business. I'm so happy to have you here today because here you will be inspired, educated, and motivated to know Inflamed Sisters thrive together always. Today, I have an amazing guest. That guest is the lovely Mayia Warren. But before we get into that, let me also let you know this episode is sponsored by Mind Flight Journal, To Better Days, and AI3 Joint Pain Relief Spray. You'll learn more about those brands towards the end of this episode. All right, like I said, I've got my amazing guest, Mayia Warren from Better Not Bitter podcast. Come on in, Mayia. It's so good to see you today. How are you doing?
I am good, and thank you for having me.
It is amazing to have you. And one of the reasons is because you are one of my favorite podcasts, Better Not Bitter podcast, and what you are doing for the Spoonie and chronic illness community is so inspirational to me and to many of us. So I was like, I need to have Mayia on for this very special episode in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is the month of May, to discuss, Spoonie mental health awareness with you and get into that topic because I hear you talk about it often as well. So can you tell us about yourself? Because before I go too deep into it, tell me about yourself.
Yes, so as you guys heard, my name is Mayia Warren. I am a music artist, advocate, visual artist, podcaster, and a content creator, which means I do a myriad of things, but the bulk of it is serving others and teaching others how to serve the communities they desire to advocate for well.
And I must say, you are doing an amazing job at that. I have seen a lot of your work and have had the opportunity to get to know you. And in knowing you, I love all that you are doing. And I look forward to seeing and working with you in the future on several of those projects in the future. The reason I wanted to have this topic too is because you are someone who lives with multiple chronic illnesses. Can you tell us about your chronic illness journey?
Yeah, so I live with three predominant currently diagnosed chronic illnesses. The first one being chronic migraine disease, the second one being hypermobility spectrum disorder, and the third one being chronic fatigue syndrome. As you know, those of us who live with multiple chronic illnesses, all those things find some way to intertwine and intermingle, which makes them suitable to be labeled as comorbidities, which means the presence of multiple chronic illnesses interacting in one individual. So my journey started from birth. I did not know that I had a specific genetic condition called hypermobility spectrum disorder. But I went through 20 plus injuries, not knowing why I was dislocating and so bluxing and being injured all the time so very easily. Like things like getting out of the bed or just running around in the backyard, I would get injured from. And so last year I was officially diagnosed. Chronic migraine disease, I got diagnosed around 2011 to 2015. And the reason why there's a range is because, as we know, the diagnosis process can be a little bit just not as static. It tends to be dynamic in that it may change. Doctor may get something wrong. So it just varies. And then chronic fatigue syndrome was kind of like the tag along illness that came with both of those things.
Yeah. And in dealing with all of that, Maya, as many of you know, I also have multiple chronic illnesses such as rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, and previous to a hysterectomy, endometriosis. But in living with those for such a long length of time, I found that it also coincided with my mental health journey. How has that been for you, especially as a young person? Because one thing you left out, that you are a young lady that is doing a lot, and living with all of these multiple chronic illnesses.
Yeah, so they've all contributed to my mental health in the early stages. And I've mentioned this on my podcast. Like, I was in some heavy denial, and a lot of that was because I had already had a disability and a medical condition called albinism. So, albinism in and of itself is not a disability. It just means I lack pigmentation in my eyes, hair, and skin. But the disability comes from the resultant development of the eyes that occurs with albinism, which caused me to be visually impaired. So, not only did I have a chip on my shoulder already from that, there were times where I felt like I had to prove myself and overcompensate to prove I was just as good as or could accomplish what other students could. So as you can
Mhm.
imagine, I'm just getting over or acknowledging that particular chipset and then having to deal with a chronic illness that was impacting every area of my life was like a rude awakening. So for years I dealt with the denial of that. Um, and so finally, I had to come to grips with, hey, this is a very real thing, and I need to acknowledge it if I want to live well and get past it. So, acknowledging it in therapy, talking about how it's literally changing the way I view myself in terms of the things I attach to my self worth, the things that I attributed to what success meant, the things that I desired in the future. So, yeah, it's definitely impacted me. Um, on so many levels.
Yeah, I can understand it. I've had my journey as well, because in living with multiple chronic illnesses and having a lifetime of it, where it was minimalized or we experienced medical gaslighting at times, weren't able to get the answers that we deserved. I know for me, it played into my high functioning depression. And what that is basically a person who, like those of us who live with invisible illnesses, can hide in plain sight. You can
Mhm.
be high functioning, achieving everything. I was the one who graduated with a greater than 4.0 GPA, attended high school and college, the best, one of the top colleges for nursing. But I struggled emotionally and mentally throughout that process. And it took a time for me to really recognize that I needed to take care of myself, not just appear to look well, but to actually make sure that I was feeling well. And it often starts with the mindset, that foundation for healing that you and I have discussed before. But when we take that in, let's tie that into being a spoonie.
Mm.
Some of them may not be familiar with that term. So we've talked a bit of the mental health aspects, but we also want to take that into being considering the spoonie mental health awareness that we
Yeah.
want to put out there. So what is your definition of a spoonie?
So I forget the specific individual who came up with this theory, but there was a lady who was out with a friend and she has multiple chronic illnesses. And she was explaining to this particular friend over dinner uh, what it was like to live with chronic illness in terms of energy, in terms of fatigue and productivity and all those things. And so she came up with the illustration of spoons. And so what it is, if for those of us who are listening, I'm holding 5 pins of different colors, and they're going to represent spoons today. Um, so what the spoon theory says, if say you take a range of typical daily activities that you would do. So, starting from waking up out of the bed to brushing your teeth to eating breakfast to maybe working to eating lunch to maybe showering or running errands, and then your nighttime routine. The average individual without a chronic illness doesn't have to take into account how much energy they need to distribute between those activities, but those of us with chronic illness do. So we formulate or illustrate this concept by calling them spoons. So I might have to take this blue spoon of energy, and since I only have five, I got to pick from my list of daily activities that I just mentioned where the spoon may go. So it may go to showering. This purple spoon may go to eating or cooking a meal, one of those three meals of the day that is important. So let's just say breakfast. This yellow spoon might have to go to um, making a phone call for a doctor's appointment because that takes a lot of energy, especially when you're on hold for long periods of time. This fourth and green spoon may have to go to, trying to get through work, depending on however long it is. And then this last orange spoon has to be distributed between maybe cooking or eating dinner, maybe cooking or eating lunch, or let's just say doing laundry. It's going to depend on the person how it's distributed, but we kind of have to make the conscious effort to decide which one's more important. For some people, it might be, man, I might not have clean clothes for the rest of the week, so I might as well put this toward laundry and just not eat. So those are the types of decisions that people with chronic illnesses or spoonies have to make, given the amount of spoons or the amount of energy they have, given their symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you see, that's why I wanted to have you in this discussion, because you even came out with the amazing illustration and demonstration of it for those of you who are not able to watch this on visually. This is going to be posted also to my YouTube channel so that you can really get the full effect of it. But for our listeners, they're also able to understand too that it's based upon the Spoonie theory. A person with chronic illness only has a certain amount of energy that they can have to extend to activities of daily life and things that we need to do. But that energy that we have to put out, we have to conserve it too, so that we can make sure that we are able to do those things and function in daily life. And this is different from what people who have no chronic illnesses have to put up with at times. Having to consider also your chronic illness and how it affects your energy is important. But that energy that you have also can have and have not been able to conserve can also affect your mental health as well. What has been your journey when it comes to your spoons and your mental health? And what are some steps that you've taken in that area?
So I'm just gonna break it down to the basics. There are certain non-negotiables that I have with myself, or used to have with myself, in terms of how I took care of myself, hygiene, and I've kind of had to maneuver my expectations to be more flexible. But even now, I have certain non-negotiables. So without fail, one of the things that I have to, no negotiable, no changing this, reserve certain amount of spoons for is showering, because it's not like I need to be clean. I love being clean. Don't get me wrong. But I shower every night. One, because with my symptoms, the shower, the heat from the water has a calming effect on the inflammation that I experience. So if I can't really get no sense of relief throughout the day, I'm going to make time to experience that little bit of relief for 5 minutes in the shower. So that's a non-negotiable for me. So even, as you can see, adjusting my expectations to things that are non-negotiable. Another thing that is a non-negotiable for me is eating two meals. Like I consider a meal a win if I eat 2 meals a day. And here's why: because I might not have the strength for a third. So I'm picking and choosing. Is that going to be breakfast and lunch? Is that going to be lunch and dinner? But either way, I'm making sure that I'm eating in some capacity, because 9 times out of 10, I don't have an appetite. But me not eating ends up in me having a major flare up, which could end me up in the emergency room, which could set me back from work, or creating content, which is going to affect, me internally, where I'm like, man, you should have ate. You know how we get into that spiral of beating ourselves up when we don't fulfill our to-do list. So even, learning to say, okay, what's really important? And it also means recognizing what needs to be eliminated. So, you and I talked about this beforehand, but being able to say, okay, since I do multiple things, understanding and being sensitive to, okay, what is requiring more of me than it should right now. For me right now, it's producing music that requires way more from me than everything else that I'm doing. So I have to sit that down for this season and being willing to say, okay, I'm not giving up on that thing. It's being sat down. It's on the bench while the other five players on the court are doing their thing, you know. So being willing to not attach what I can and can't do or what I am or not able to do to my identity. And for me, my faith plays a large role in that. My identity is solidified in Christ. So if I'm attaching anything else to my identity other than what Christ has given me, then I am, you know, trying to build walls and structure something that was never meant for me to structure with the limited spoons I have.
Wow, look at that. So all that you just expressed a lot about the journey that you've taken to establish boundaries, to recognize what were those things that were important to you, to and while establishing those boundaries, you were establishing priorities. What's important? And most people don't understand getting in that shower, getting in those meals are very difficult for people when they live with multiple chronic illnesses because we deal with not only chronic pain, but chronic fatigue. Some of us who have migraines or other types of conditions may deal with dizziness. We have severe, at times, brain fog that impacts us. And all of those things really makes it hard to do those easy activities that those who are abled, as they say, can do easily. So in this case, I like the way that that ties into mental health too, because in order to prioritize our mental health as Spoonies, as people who live with chronic illnesses, we also need to be able to prioritize, set and establish boundaries, and make sure that we are doing our best to conserve our energy, because in conserving our energy also impacts how we are going to be able to not only cope with those day-to-day activities, but cope mentally and emotionally with the challenges that those of us who have um, not only chronic illnesses, but mental health concerns deal with. So it's usually what people don't realize. Oftentimes it does coincide, not always, but oftentimes mental health and chronic illness can connect. And that may be like in my case, because of the many years of being denied treatment for chronic illness. For some of us, we may have experienced childhood traumas. For others of us, we may have not actually ever learned how to cope with our health conditions and adjust to that. Because sometimes we're just grieving the person that we thought we were supposed to be or that we thought we could have been without chronic illness, and not realizing that with the right mindset and with the right and let's not say toxic positivity, because it's not that case. We don't want to ignore the challenges and say, well, we can fight everything with positivity, because it's not always the case. But we can, with the right mindset, be able to establish a foundation that we can actually heal, not just physically but mentally and emotionally through those through what we face. So I like how in what you said you tied in the importance of boundaries, the importance of priorities, the importance of making sure that we put ourselves first in those circumstances and not all the things that are going on around us and all the things we need to complete. We have to find a way to put ourselves first and really do a self evaluation of what my needs are at that time and what's really important. And what's most important is that we can serve those spoons. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so in that discussion that we just had in reference to that, we talked about the definition of the spoonie. We talked about mental health journeys that we both had. We've even established ways that you can cope and work on those things. What do you recommend to others? Because you are an advocate in every sense of the word. What are you doing, recommending to others and doing in the community to help them to be able to balance their mental health and their lives as spoonies?
So several things. Let me provide a disclaimer. I'm not the type of person that gives one size fits all recommendations. So to those who may be listening, be like, there they go, giving stuff that probably don't apply to me. That's not gonna be this. But what I always encourage is start at simply acknowledging what you're going through, because a lot of times, I know for me, like, denying it was such work. Like, it takes more work to be in a state of denial continuously than it does to acknowledge it and face those things head on. And ultimately, if you look at the temporary discomfort associated with acknowledging the chronic illness you may be living with or how it's affecting you, that 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 is nothing compared to the exacerbated and elongated ramifications of ignoring it over a long term period. So acknowledge it. Another thing, you mentioned having the right mindset. And for those who are listening, don't think that we're saying, like, you just gotta fit in this box. That's not what me and Katina are talking about. When we're talking about having a right mindset, we mean having the mindset that is willing to go on this journey to the best of your ability and face these things head on. So if you're in the area of self acceptance, you're like, man, okay, I recognize I have chronic migraine disease and I'm going to do what it takes to find some sort of treatment to manage it, because there is no cure, and all of those things. But you may have a day where you're on a roll and then you wake up with a major flare up. A right mindset is to just sit in that, not condemn yourself, but acknowledge that it's a very real, severe pain you're going through, but also allowing yourself to feel those emotions, but not stay there. So when we talk about having a right mindset, it's not a mindset that says I am above this. No, chronic illness will level the playing field real quick. But being able to acknowledge and face those things head on and not stay uh, um, in the areas that tend to keep us from, progressing in terms of how we perceive things. And then when you get into the anxiety and the depression that comes with it at times, finding someone trustworthy, that is someone you can confide in, and they can just be your sounding board where you can just talk, get it out. Because sometimes we feel the pressure to be like, okay, I got to have it all together around this group of people. I got to have it all together around this group of people. I got to mask my symptoms around this group of people. Find someone where you can take off that mask, so to speak, where you
Mhm.
don't have to present yourself as the superwoman or the superman or whatever the case may be. Um, and just find that person and lean into that relationship. Of course, it'll be a mutual relationship, but allow that person to be a safe space for you.
Wow. Oh, I loved all of that. Yes, the importance of acknowledging how you feel. We don't reject mindset, having positive mindset or the growth mindset doesn't mean ignoring how you feel. We're saying acknowledge how you feel. That's what Maya said. Acknowledge how you feel, and then don't walk away and think because you have chronic illnesses that you have to wear a mask. And remember how I said I was hiding in plain sight with high functioning depression and multiple undiagnosed chronic illnesses. I was pushing myself to work a full-time job, go to school full-time, maintain my religious and spiritual stability. Doing all and being the sister, the strong friend, the strong daughter, all of that. while wearing a mask, and that did damage to me mentally and emotionally. And that's why Maya and I are having this conversation, because we want to prevent others from doing that. We want you to be able to stop hiding, take off that mask, and start thriving by acknowledging what you're experiencing, and then doing what you have to do when you do that self evaluation, understanding, what do I need to do to be able to feel better, to be able to do better. And sometimes it's by implementing some natural and holistic things like journaling. Yeah, that's still, that's natural. Actually taking out a journal and writing those, when you're acknowledging them, I recommend you write those feelings down. Now, Maya is an amazing singer and poet. And I know that is one of the ways that she expresses and gets those emotions and feelings out, because it's in her music, and I want you all to check it out too. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. You see how Katina got off board just a bit because her music came to my mind. But the point of it is, let me back that on up. Acknowledge it. And as you're acknowledging it, journal it. One of the journals that I recommend is the Mind Flight Journal, where you're able to document your symptoms, document your emotional status, your feelings, track those so that you're able to share that with your doctor. But also, it takes you on the other side of things by teaching you how to instill gratitude into your daily activities, giving you mantras and prompts and challenges that motivate you to stay positive. So that's one of the journals, and I'll have that in my show notes as well, because that particular journal company is actually created by a mother and daughter who lives with chronic illnesses. And that's why I love supporting them. In fact, if you are a company that is based in helping the chronic illness community, reach out to me, reach out to us, so that we can do our best to support you, because we're a community that wants to thrive together. But acknowledge it, journal it, take off that mask, do and associate with a community of people that is going to understand you, not kill you with toxic positivity or harm you with toxic negativity, because there's two sides of that spoon too. Is that if we're overly positive and not really having a clear side of things, sometimes it can take away from you really healing from those things that you're dealing with. So you're just suppressing it and pushing it in the background like it doesn't exist. That's what toxic positivity can do to us. And suppression of emotions and feelings and trauma leads to autoimmune disease. That's what research shows, that it has a very strong possible connection to it, because most war autoimmune sisters, thriving sisters, chronic illness sisters, have a history that is steeped in a suppression of their emotions and feelings or traumas. The other thing is that toxic negativity. There's oftentimes communities of people who have chronic illnesses that are, at times it appears that we're at a battle at who's got the worst illness, who's got it the worst. And the truth is, um, it's all subjective. What my bad day compared to your bad day is still my bad day. Okay, so we don't have to compare that. Your fatigue or your pain is still yours, and it's bad for you on some days. So we just have to get out of that mindset of avoiding being toxic positive, and then or being toxic negative, and find that space where we can be our authentic selves, acknowledge what we're going through, and start to heal from those things. And one of the ways we heal from it in this community, us Inflamed Sisters come together and we thrive together through shared experiences, through inspiration, through education, through motivation. We gonna get through this because we're not alone. One of us has been there and has got through it. That means all of us can. And that's how I see it. So when it comes to being a Spoonie, And being a person who is also raising mental health, the importance of mental health awareness. One of the things that Maya also mentioned was, in a discussion, was therapy as something I believe as well. So just know that it's important that you get the help that you need from the sources that can give you the best help and those who are qualified and trained to do so. And I strongly support therapy when it is needed. I search psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever it is that you need to get through those moments. Seek that help. And there's a large community of therapists of all types that can be there to support you. There's even therapists who are specific to the chronic illness community. And what I would like to do is find ways to advocate for that. And then on top of it, we have to dig into when it comes to making sure that you get someone who actually understands you and finding someone who actually is going through what you are going through and having them guide you through the process is also a way to get the help that you need as spoonies to learn how to conserve your energy by taking care of the mental and emotional aspects of things as well. And did I say learn how to conserve your energy by taking care of your mental and emotional health as well? Because the physical health is always going to be there blaring at us. But because we can't see how we're doing mentally and emotionally, we sometimes kick that to the curb and don't apply the importance that it deserves to it. So I want us to work on that, sisters. Okay, let's come through that so that we can continue to not just strive but thrive together. So, my sister, can you please tell me where we can find you, and what do you have coming up that you would like us to be aware of? Because we want to support you in any way we can.
Yeah. So I'm Googleable. You can Google me at Mayia Warren, Warren, or you can find me on my website, MAYIAWARREN.org. Same applies for my Instagram handles and YouTube channel. And I have several campaigns, social media campaigns coming down the pike this year. And I have for May, Mental Health Awareness Month for disability and chronic illnesses. Then I have Chronic Migraine Awareness Month in June, in addition to International Albinism Awareness Day campaign, which is also in June. And I have a few podcast episodes lined up with some amazing guests, as always. And some a lot of things coming down the pike, but I'm looking forward to them all.
Thank you. And we are looking forward to see all of it, support it, and we want you to continue to be the shining light of within this community. You are advocating and raising awareness on many fronts, and you are to be commended for that. And that's why I said we had to have you on this because you are a example of an inflamed sister thriving. We appreciate you so much, Maya, for being an amazing guest and all of the wonderful shares that you provided today. Our sponsors for this episode are AI3 One Spray Away. AI3 One Spray Away provides joint and muscle relief. The AI3 proprietary blend of DMSO and essential oils with anti inflammatory benefits will support joint and muscle health, provide pain support, and improve healing and recovery times to get you back to doing things you love again sooner. Two Better Days. Two Better Days has a range of fast acting active patches that are completely drug free, easy to apply, and backed by science, shown to boost the health of your nerves, joints, and muscles in a completely safe way. Each patch contains a combination of vitamin D and nutrients that can provide you the relief you need when you need it most. Mind Flight Journal. Created by a mother and daughter team who experience chronic illnesses, this vegan leather spiral bound journal has daily entries to track your symptoms and medications, as well as daily inspirational quotes, challenges, and creative writing prompts that encourage thoughtful introspection and growth mindset. See the show notes in order to receive details on special offers available to you from my sponsors. It was so wonderful to have all of you here today, and I can't wait to have you back again. I want you to remember that, my sisters, we may be inflamed, but we're still here. And as long as we are here, let's thrive together always. Have a wonderful day.